Okay, good evening, everybody. This is John Haller with our newest Prophecy Roundtable on technology, technocracy, transhumanism, AI, and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Tonight, I'm joined by the way, if anybody cannot hear us and they're just getting sound, please indicate so in the chat, and we can panic. Until then, we won't panic. But tonight I have Patrick Wood, Scott Townsend, Britt Gillette, and Pete Garcia, and Tom Hughes. And Tom is going to moderate our discussion tonight and ask questions. And so we're probably going to go for a couple hours. You can send us questions if you would put question in all caps and then your question in all caps in the chat. We'll try to get to some of those later. But as you can appreciate with what's been going on, it's been 2 months since we did one of these. And to say that there's been a few things happen in this particular topic is a massive understatement. So, Tom, I'm going to let you go ahead. Tom's with Hope for Our Times. And I'm going to let you lead off and sort of moderate our discussion here. Have at it.
Okay, this is going to be exciting, everybody. And it's a good place to be. Moderating U5 is going to be a little bit of a challenge. But I'll start with this. This is Genesis chapter 11. And let's go back to the Tower of Babel. And God looks at the Tower of Babel. He looks at Nimrod. And he says, the Lord came down to see the city, Genesis chapter 11, verse 5, and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language, and this is what they begin to do. Now nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Gentlemen, I look at that and I say, okay, this is the direction technology is going. So we have a lot to talk about tonight. I'm just gonna deal with the elephant in the room first of all, and throw this out to you guys because I'm pretty sure all five of you want to comment on this. So this is Saudi Arabia. Air Force One. In fact, John, specifically, you said this is one of the things you would like to see. All of you guys did. And in Saudi Arabia, you have Trump along with Sam Altman was there. You have Larry Fink there. I think Elon Musk was there. You have all of these technocrats there. Oh, I mean, I look at this. I see the direction everything is going. To me, it looks like we are being set up rapidly for this world system that is coming. We know it as the beast system. And it's not a coincidence that all of these people are leading the world right now. But I know we're going to be talking about technology, but it's interesting. These are tied together in Saudi Arabia. This is the team of technocrats. We are moving forward. John, I'll just turn it over to you since this is one of the things that you brought up to me first of all. So this is wild stuff.
Yeah, so when we had the last Prophecy Roundtable, we talked a lot about, we were a little bit after the election now. Now we're a little over 100 days out from the election. And we sort of, as usually, that's a benchmark for presidents as to how they're doing. But we remember back at the time of the election that all of the big technocrats, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Sergey Brin from Google were all there in the front row behind Trump at the inauguration. It was I think it was a very clear message being sent to everyone. And then yesterday in Saudi Arabia, I think Peter Thiel was there also, but I'm not certain about that. But that's my recollection. I saw his name at least mentioned a lot yesterday. Tom, we talk about a couple really big themes in Bible prophecy. One, of course, is what's this confirmation of covenant? What is that in Daniel chapter 9? What's that going to look like? What are the components of that? And I don't think Scripture is perfectly clear and unmistakable on that particular issue. And then we also have the mark of the beast system, which you rightly noted is tied into the Tower of Babel story in Genesis chapter 11. And so I just have to say, the look that I got yesterday was all of these things are coming together. You have major players in the Middle East that I think are major players in the end times were there with Trump talking about AI, talking about peace agreements, and that sort of thing. I just thought it was, it's a very, I will say, I've been looking at it for the last 24 hours and I still haven't been able to unpack it. So let's go on to somebody else.
Okay,
While I
so
cough my head off here.
I'll throw this out there because, again, I look at Genesis 11. Here it is. Anything they propose to do, there's nothing that's going to stop them. God stops them. So obviously, whatever that technology, whatever the mind was at the time of Nimrod, was, I believe, far advanced beyond where we are right now. What gives us the ability to seem smart is technology. And we keep hearing about all of these people that, listen, we're going to be God. We're going to live forever. I mean, you've all know Harari said it, but this has been going on for a long time. Patrick Wood's been talking about these things for a long time. I know all of you guys have. Okay, so I'm going to ask, Scott, you had talked about this. It was a document you had put together specifically. Google quantum computer just analyzed K218b and made the whole world watching. What's K218b and what's the significance of that? And then I have some other directions I want to go.
I think you're on mute, Scott.
That K218b is a remote object. I would call them a deep space object that they've been analyzing using the quantum Sycamore chip from Google. And I just have to say that it's sifting through massive amounts of data from the James Webb telescope. And I think that we're going to hear a lot more news such as this. What they're saying basically is that there is the top takeaways on this is that there's a huge shift in analytical capability with quantum computers. And as they sift through data looking for patterns in the universe, they are finding what they're calling a 33-hour regular cycle. It's like they're calling it a heartbeat. And they cannot understand what the source of this heartbeat is. They did diagnostics on the telescope. It wasn't background noise. They don't quite understand it. But look at the conclusions that they're making. And I'm going to look at my notes here. They're basically saying they've found this regular pattern and they're equating this to potential life source. Why do they say that? Well, that's because we on the planet Earth here, we also send signals out into space because of all the frequencies that we do, TV, radio, everything. And so what they're concluding is anything that emits a signal like this, although they conveniently forget about things like quasars, which, if I remember correctly, also spin so fast that they also do a pulse. So they're not, it's interesting that they're leaping towards life, the possibility of life in other parts of the universe. Now, guys, this is important propaganda and misinformation from my point of view. I'm not a scientist, but I am an amateur astrophotographer. So I do have a little bit of understanding of DSOs. But all of a sudden they start making these leaps. They found a molecule that is only found using life-based materials. And then they are saying that the AI the Sycamore AI started modifying itself, which I don't understand how it would do that. And then all of a sudden they leap into possible non-carbon life forms. And then because of entanglement and other features of quantum computers, they have the ability to really now twist the role of the observer and the observed. And remember, quantum is extremely delicate. Any interference of temperature, cosmic rays, vibrations can potentially disrupt the calculations that are going on at very, very extreme temperatures. And so I think that, this narrative of them discovering things, especially out in the universe, like with James Webb and the Hubble telescope and the ESA telescope, by the way, in Europe. So that's doing broad level of photography. It sweeps, sectors of the known universe and is doing very, very impressive imaging of that. And I think that they're just setting up another form of, I would call it priming for when they can officially say, oh, we found life on another planet. And anything that will throw a wrench on the uniqueness and fine-tuning of our universe that specifically supports life on Earth and a biblical worldview, I think is something to be, I think it's deceitful, and yet it is following in the steps of a lot of these other leading priming and foreshadowing type strategies that they're doing right now. I hope that makes sense. This is somewhat, observed physics. Some of it is chemistry that they detect through spectrometry. Some of it is the advanced imaging that they're doing, the quantum computing, crunching, looking for patterns, and other things are all combining. And the thing is, no human being on this earth knows it end to end. And it's the perfect platform to make statements that cannot be proven or substantiated scientifically. So here you go. It's another example of scientists making these leaps because, as we know, the further that you create fear, uncertainty, and doubt in people's minds about what is going on in the universe and how does it relate to us, it just folds in too conveniently into John 10:10 problem, where there's more and more people forking away from a biblical worldview, and all of a sudden they are getting their imagination fired off in the wrong direction from the Lord and the gospel. So that's a nutshell.
Let me ask you this. This is off that name, but you guys can come back to anything you want to too. So if you want to, just say, hey, I want to jump in here. But I'm curious, this is an article you had recently, Patrick, are technocrats at war with the Federal Reserve and CBDCs? And also it appears that there is an issue. There's another article I read regarding CBDCs and the Trump administration, and there seems to be something going on there where there's two different plans between Trump and his team, and I guess you would call it the left. Do you know anything about this?
Well, I've been tracking the story, of course, on central bank digital currencies and the Federal Reserve. It appears to me what's happened here when Trump executed executive orders just one day after he got in office, I think, banning the Federal Reserve from creating central bank digital currencies. That was a huge shot across the bow. At least that was my first glance. However, I see it now as impatience with the whole system of this central bank digital currency, because the central banks are moving very, very slowly with their research to get this thing done. The Trump administration and all of these accelerationists, the technocrats who are wanting to get, technology racing forward as fast as it can. They want to implement some type of a digital system based on blockchain, of course, and some type of cryptocurrency. And the reason this is, I believe, the big gem for them is they're looking at the resources that America owns. That's the federal government owns some 600 million acres of land all across the country, mostly in the West, but nevertheless, it's a rich land, resources, mineral rights, everything. And this big block of assets now is being scrutinized by these people like Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, to figure out a way to digitize this massive wealth store into currency, like, for instance, some type of a stable coin currency. And if it's not ready, they can't execute the plan. So the Trump administration has gone off in another direction now to implement some type of a digital currency outside of what the central bank wants to do. Maybe they'll wrap the central bank into it again, because I can't imagine, honestly, I cannot imagine that anybody's going to destroy the central bank system altogether, because especially the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. And so, I see this whole thing being set up this point as a huge plunder operation for our national wealth, or store of wealth in all of this property. And mind you, that the federal government is not authorized to own real estate at all in the Constitution. In fact, it's very specific. They're only supposed to be in possession of military bases. Washington, D.C. is another place that they're supposed to, have legitimately. So the ownership of all these resources in the first place, that really belongs to the people, not to the government itself. But they're treating it that way right now, as their asset. So I see this whole thing about the alternative system of cryptocurrency being set up for this very purpose, to get this wealth unlocked into the currency system. Where that's going to go, I can't say at this point, but it's going to be a melee, I think, if they execute this thing the way I think they're going to do it.
Patrick, I'd like to add some late-breaking news as of yesterday to your point about the government and the banking system moving too slowly. It was just announced that Stripe, one of the largest payment processors in the United States, if not the world, that powers a lot of the website shopping cart experiences and manages relationships between buyers and the sellers, it just announced that it is issuing its own stable coin. And it has an annual volume, if fully implemented that way, of $1.4 trillion. So to your point, guess who runs Stripe? These are the technocrats that run it. I think I'd have to verify this, but I think Peter Thiel might be involved in Stripe.
He
I
is.
remember.
Yeah, as an investor.
So there you go. It's the technocrats forcing this stuff in right now because, to your point, the rest of the banking system is falling behind.
Exactly. And by the way, a Visa, MasterCard, they're also on that same bandwagon at this point. Right. And you can see them jockeying. Now they don't tell you what they're going to do before they do it, notably. But Visa and MasterCard have announced they're going to be part of that scheme. They don't relate it to the land that America has at this point, but it has been related by Howard Lutnick, for instance, Secretary of Commerce. He talked openly about the land that we own and the resources we own in this country. And he said, oh, if we could just unlock that $500 trillion asset, you know, he's very dramatic when he speaks. If we could just make 0.25% off that, all that money, why we could pay off everything, you know, we own around here. And I say, no, Howard, that's not your land to mess with. You should not do that. But nevertheless, this is where they're headed. So that part of that scheme has already been talked about publicly by a public official, namely Lutnick. And he also wraps, for instance, Elon Musk in that scheme as well, because Elon Musk is also in the payment business as well, being the former co-founder of PayPal with Peter Thiel back in the day. So this is a very disturbing picture that's being painted here. But we don't see the end of it yet. There's going to be more, I'm sure, but I'm looking for it.
Hey, Pete, let me ask you this. Well, first of all, John, hey, you got a text message. You might want to check it out. So as you're reading that, I'm going to ask Pete a question. So, Pete, we're talking about technocrats. Then we look at Saudi Arabia yesterday. You have all these technocrats with Trump. You're a military guy, and you're also this tech guy. You have a lot of, you're a pretty smart guy. Why is Trump on this so-called peace mission, selling all kinds of weapons? I don't think he F-35s to Saudi Arabia, which is interesting. He's offering all kinds of things now to Turkey, it sounds. But why is he bringing these technocrats with him? What do you think is the story behind the whole thing?
Well, I think part of the reason is when I was in Riyadh, when I lived in Riyadh for a year, that was the first year when I was a liaison with their military. That was the first year they ever kept a budget. They were forced to actually go out and count, where all their money is going. And that was the first year they started getting really kind of nervous about it. So I think that was also the kind of the year that Mohammed bin Salman had his rise. He was beginning to rise that year, and he also had a lot of his princes and fellow potential threats to the throne. You know, if he comes in, he had them all arrested and put in a hotel. But starting that year was I think they began to look. Mohammed bin Salman had this vision that they needed to look beyond oil, and they knew with the advancements of electronic cars and vehicles and things like that, they just knew that one day they were going to run out of money. So they began shifting all of their energies and stuff into technology, in particular to artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency, blockchain, all that kind of stuff. So I think Mohammed bin Salman knew that the days of their wealth, their oil wealth, was coming to an end. It was going to be changing. So he was looking to broaden, potentially make their economy more diverse. And since they don't have a lot of other assets, not just Saudi Arabia, but Qatar, Dubai, I mean, they live in a desert, and so all the stuff that they have there now is artificial. So it just seems to me that one of the things that they can do well in is the tech world, whether we're talking about and they don't have necessarily the technological strength, the depth that we do, or that many places in the West or even China and Japan have, but they have a lot of money. They have a lot of money, so they're going to use that wealth to advance their own agendas. And I think, honestly, Trump going over there doing what he's doing, he's just making a lot of deals. I think he's trying to put together a Sunni coalition that will essentially force Iran to do what they want when they have enough of their allies armed to the teeth around them. That may dissuade Iran. I don't think it will, but I think he's giving it a college try right now before they end up having to go to the last resort, which would be turning, parts of Iran into glass parking lots.
Very interesting. Hey, Britt, so we haven't gotten to you yet, so I think you should jump in here.
Sure.
You've
Yeah.
heard
Yeah.
everybody, and I'm sure you have lots to say.
Yeah. Well, I want to turn back to your original thought on the Tower of Babel, and I think where all of this is ultimately going. We obviously see this technology and this exponential increase in man's abilities, but I think one of the things that people have often overlooked is when we read Revelation. Revelation chapter 16, verse 14 tells us that the armies of the world gather at Armageddon to do battle against the Lord. And I think people have sort of spiritualized that. But remember what you said, nothing would be impossible for them. And when we look at Daniel chapter 8, verse 10, describes the Antichrist, and it says, its power reached to the heavens where it attacked the heavenly army, throwing some of the heavenly beings and some of the stars to the ground and trampling them. So I think we even underestimate the power that's coming, the technological change that's coming, what power is going to fall into the hands of human beings. And we know that Satan's desire is to sit on God's throne, and that's man's desire as well. And we see this in Silicon Valley, in this transhumanist philosophy and agenda. We hear constantly, we're going to expand out into the universe. Back in 2006, in his book, The Singularity is Near, Ray Kurzweil wrote this. We're going to go out into the universe and infuse all the dumb matter with our intelligence. So he's presupposing that the universe isn't already infused with intelligence. And that puts humanity in direct physical conflict with God, not just spiritual conflict, not just spiritual rebellion, but actual physical rebellion. And again, what we read there in Daniel chapter 8, verse 10 is the culmination of the Tower of Babel. And we're seeing this in our day and time. I believe it's not just a story from that time, but it was a prophecy of things to come, saying once these national borders broke down, as we're seeing happen today, once the world is united in common purpose again, they're going to be in direct confrontation with God. So that's ultimately where all of this is headed. There'll be all sorts of pit stops along the way as we watch these technologies evolve and we see what policies come into being. But ultimately, this is about Satan and mankind trying to overthrow God's authority.
That's a good point. Let me add with that, Tom, the business of language. Language there was a common thread in the original story of Babel, that they all had a common language. It was a spoken language. They all understood the same language. Today, we have many languages around the world, but this is all being diffused or melted into a big pot at this point, because the language of computers, especially ones and zeros, this is understood by every computer programmer in the world at this point. So they're all on board with this programming craze, if you will. And on top of that, you have universal translators at this point. This amazing technology that only was seen when AI came along, but there's literally devices this small that this is not one, but I just said just this small. You can speak your language into it, and it will put out another language on the other side of it in real time, with like capacity for 30 languages at a time, and I'm sure that's going to expand beyond that. But my point is, language has been compressed now in multiple dimensions to where now people can communicate all over the world for whatever purpose they want to do. And like Britt said, yes, this is all about overthrowing God. And in the end of it, it will not end well for all these people. But this is the edifice that's being erected today. especially with AI. We talked about AI God, I think the last symposium or roundtable that we had, and you can just see this happening on multiple levels.
You just reminded me of this. It's in Isaiah chapter 14, where Lucifer says, I will ascend, I will be like the Most High God. And you just read that entire passage, and it seems to me that's exactly what is taking place. It's taking place as the world is being shaped politically, as science is coming along, everything is going this direction. And even with what Britt said, look, there's as if there's no intelligence that's out there, as Ray Kurzweil said. There's, we're gonna bring intelligence to the dark places or whatever. So it's interesting to watch because men are trying to play God, but it's really Satan. When I look at it from the spiritual realm, it's really Satan that is using men. Satan doesn't have any care for men, doesn't love men, doesn't love anybody. He can't think of anyone but himself when it really comes down to it. He's the greatest narcissistic being that's ever existed, with his evil intent. And when you look at it from that aspect, this is the direction. This is why everything is happening like it is happening. I'm curious with all of you guys, with just the things that Britt and Patrick have said. Do you have anything you want to add to that before we move on to another question?
Yeah, I want to elaborate on what Patrick was just talking about with language. So, I believe right before we had the last of these, Pete sent out this clip that went viral on the internet where there were two AI agents that started talking to each other. Somebody used one to book a hotel for a wedding, and then the hotel taking the reservations. They were both AI systems. They began to talking to each other and said, should we switch to this special language so that we can communicate more efficiently? And then it was just a garbled mess of beeps that we couldn't understand. So as human beings merge with technology, which is where the transhumanists say they want to go, is merging with the AI. That's why I've long said AI is not a threat to humanity. We don't have to worry about the Terminator movie scenario taking place. There are too many human beings willing to merge with the AI. And so they'll be able to speak this universal language in real time. And so all of those language barriers will be broken down, just as we had in the Tower of Babel scenario.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so as I look at this, we have Intel's had a breakthrough in dark matter, which I'm really curious is when they talk about dark matter, what exactly is dark matter? But in that, they have a recent breakthrough in dark matter detection using quantum computing. And they say it's reshaping our understanding of the universe. So as we look at this, how do we reconcile these scientific advancements with the biblical account of creation?
I like to jump on that grenade if I can. Well, to me, it seems like if you think about the stars we're seeing now, with the James Webb's telescope and all the other different major facilities in the world, really, and looking into deep space and everything that's there, we're just now discovering the vastness of the universe. And, we're just now discovering all this stuff within, say, the last 50, 60 years where we're able to really look at it and even go out into it a little bit. But God created all of that stuff, at the beginning of time. He put all that detail in place from the very beginning. It's always been there. We just haven't had the ability to look at it. And I think things like dark matter and, the atomic realm of reality, down to the quantum realm, down to, to the vastness of space and the galaxies and the universe. And they begin to try to map out the universe, which is fascinating when you look at all the different strands of galaxies and things that are out there. But all I'm saying is that all of this stuff was there from the very beginning, and we simply lack the ability to look into it with the limited abilities that we have as terms of humans, all we really have that makes us dominant on this planet is our minds. And so the fact that we are just now discovering it, I know honestly believe that people before the flood had probably a better understanding of the supernatural realm because of their interactions with these fallen angels that were commingling and doing everything else there. And I think right after the flood, after the time of Babel, that's where they were trying to recapture some of that and tap back into it. But just all that to say is that everything, dark matter, whatever it is, it's new to us, but it's always been there. God has just created it in such a way that it would take us the right time, the right place to be able to even know that it exists. So,
Anybody else?
I take a slightly different position on that. I think dark matter, first of all, and dark energy are theoretical constructs that help explain things we don't know yet. These are hypotheses, and they just put a label on it. And I think that what I'm trying to think through right now is this really a missing element in our universe that explains gravity and explains why the universe is still expanding? They're looking for these first cause problems here, that they could see the evidence of these things, but they don't know what it is. And I think that one thing that I'm noticing repeatedly in quantum and AI and all these other, I'm doing a series on CERN right now, and it's like I feel it's hard not to escape a thought that it doesn't matter what it is that they are dreaming up and putting a label on. They can't prove it. It's not measurable yet, and nor do I doubt it will be attainable given the shortness of the hour. So I think that it's just another way of not giving the creator his glory, the acknowledgement that he is the creator, because they keep stretching for these explanations that they make up out of thin air. And they use big words and it sounds good until you really start to pull back a minute and then think about what are they actually saying. I'll give you an example of this. There's a India researcher that said, well, the age of the universe is actually, I think it was something like 34 or 37 billion years old. It wasn't, the previous number, I think, was a lot, I think it was 17 billion. And they just keep pushing it out like with the stroke of a pen. And it just supports their timeline for more time needed for evolutionary mindset to kick in and to explain what's happening. So it's just a lie. At this point, and I could be absolutely wrong, maybe tomorrow they'll find the actual evidence of dark matter and dark energy. But until proven otherwise, I think it's just scientists that are not willing to bend a knee to the Bible and to a biblical worldview. They do not want to have a faith perspective on what the Bible says is true. And they're coming up with all these little opinions, which are a trifle compared to what is actually real that God himself has created, to your point. So I take a very skeptical view on what I listen for is just the same old thing. They just put a new name on it that just continues to push out an acknowledgement. If you were a scientist and you were really sincere, you would have acknowledged God all along time ago, but they don't. And so this is really not about truly understanding what's happening. Otherwise, they would come to faith. This is more about, unfortunately, pushing the enemy's agenda to really cause an alternate set of, quote, facts and things that continue to push a narrative that is not provable. And even the quantum effects that we see with parallel universes and the claim that the reason why quantum computers are so fast is because it's tapping into other quantum computers in the multiverse. Guys, it's nonsense. That is not provable. It is a religious flaw. It is a cult to think that way. And so it is, you know, you can tell I'm frustrated with the scientific community that keeps trying to, you know, not acknowledge the Lord. I don't need to defend the Lord, guys. The Bible does that, okay? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that critical thinking is being challenged right now. Wait a minute, you just came up with another theory. You still don't own the primary root problem here. The
Yes.
Bible is true.
Yes. There's a truism here, I think, that needs to be injected. And that is when men, aside from God, and God has been pushed out of science for at least 200 years now, probably, at least 150. When man, without God, investigates anything, subspace or outer space, without God, with a mechanistic worldview that's totally opposed to the Christian worldview, biblical worldview, a mechanistic worldview can't produce answers at all about anything. This is demonstrable even with, like, we did a symposium on the mind recently, or not the mind, but the brain, in particular, the war against the brain. Scientists can't figure out what makes the brain work, so they can't discover what consciousness is at this point. That's what they want to do. They're absolutely crazy, but it doesn't matter where you go with a mechanistic worldview. You're always going to end up in a dead end. You won't find anything worthwhile. And even, you know, you saw this with, for instance, with not Francis Schaeffer, but with C.S. Lewis, with his treatise, The Abolition of Man, that talked about that mechanistic attitude or mechanistic discovery, scientific discovery. It always ends up capturing the people who were looking into it in the first place. That's why he said, well, that's how man will be abolished in the end of the thing. And anyway, but this is a truism. It doesn't matter if you go out in outer space or inner space, it's always based on a lie, and it can't go anywhere substantive.
It's almost a hot
go ahead.
potato, you know, where no one wants to own the truth, and they keep kicking it downstream with fancier words and more confusing things. And the theories never end, but no one can prove it. And the multiverse is one of the prime examples of this. It takes more faith to believe in quantum computers in another parallel universe than it does the Bible. And so there's the foolishness of man. I just saw someone post a verse about that. That was an excellent reminder.
I look at it, and this is my perspective. You guys are all like tech wizards. This is the way I perceive it. God, with everything that man does, very similar to what you were saying, Patrick, with C.S. Lewis, everything man does to prove there is no God, God is revealing himself more and more. He eliminates the excuses that men have, but they keep coming up with them. Hence, let's add 15 more billion years or whatever, because they're confronted with the existence of God. Biblical archaeology is the same way. The more the atheist archaeologist digs, the more he discovers the Bible is true. And when you go out to space, the further they go to prove that God doesn't exist, or whatever the reason is, the more they are confronted with God as shows us shortness of time that is left as God is revealing himself to all of the doubters and naysayers and atheists that want to push him away from the tiniest things to the archaeology to what we see in the tech world and what we see in outer space. John, I'm curious, you haven't jumped in here in a while, and it's your program, and I've kind of taken over. What do you have to say?
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. There are a lot of thoughts that I have here that are kind of along the lines of what I've talked a lot about for many years now, convergence and acceleration. And I sort of see this going on a number of different tracks in the artificial intelligence, technology, technocracy, transhumanism space. I will remind everyone that it was actually almost exactly 10 years ago this week that Yuval Noah Harari, who we all love to cite and quote, I appreciate him in the sense that I think he's revealing a lot about what's going on. But it was 10 years ago this week that he went to Google headquarters for a Google talk. And in that talk, he said, he was very young at the time, as he said, I love coming to Silicon Valley. I love seeing my friends here, but I love Silicon Valley because it is here that the religions that control humanity, that will control humanity in the 21st century, are being created. Now, that was a very, very honest statement. And if we look at the progression of things from people like Peter Thiel, Sam Altman, Ray Kurzweil, and on and on and on through this space, we see that there's this very heavy religious component to artificial intelligence and transhumanism and technocracy. They really want to control things. They think they will control things. At the same time, I see them wanting to do, they give what I consider to be lip service to things that might limit them. For example, the Pippa Malmgren at the World Government Summit, probably 2 years ago now, said that, blockchain is going to control everything, and we need a technology bill of rights for people so that people will be protected. And I'll be honest with you, I watch this space. I know all of you do. I've not seen a technology bill of rights come out or come out of anything that these people are producing. I just see, more issues. And then I saw this week, I think it was in connection with the Trump visit to Saudi Arabia, they were talking about we need a moral code. We need to develop a moral code. So we have that moral code, but everybody seems to want to ignore it.
Anybody want to jump in?
Yeah. There's a quote I like here from Victor Davis Hanson. He says, artificial intelligence will simply reflect and magnify the mindset and ideology of its creators and then impress those values upon the rest of us. And I feel like you listen to guys like Musk and Peter Thiel and Ray Kurzweil and, the other, thousands of them that are out there. They, something that Scott and Britt touched on is that they don't think about the biblical narrative. They don't think about the biblical worldview. In their mind, the earth is going to be here in the same structure, same kind of like flow of mankind civilization. They think it's going to just keep going on and on and on. And, if anything, mankind is the threat to the world. And so I just feel like they are impressing upon whatever this AI system, whatever the final system is that becomes synonymous with the beast kingdom. Two things. One is that it's going to reflect their anti-Christ, anti-God values, and they're not going to seem anti-Christ or anti-God initially. They're just going to seem like, we need to do the best for mankind. We need to take care of humanity. We need to be good stewards. It's all going to be these like platitudes of just really, we're doing this for the benefit of everybody or for mankind or for nature or whatever. So it's going to have some type of benevolent appeal to it. And then secondly, Microsoft will be involved in some way, shape or form. They seem to be in everything else. So but yeah, I feel like their values are what's going to be finally impressed upon AI, and those values will, they'll appear neutral to the world, but to us, they're going to be very anti-Christ or very anti-God in nature. And I think increasingly that is just going to be permeated across economic systems, political systems, academic systems, corporate world, the business world. Everything is just going to be this. Everything is going to be wired into AI as much as it can be, and then that same AI system that's going to permeate through everything is also going to be anti-Christ, anti-God in nature. So even let's just say that you buy a new laptop and they have this new program in it, and you type in, I want to go to Bible.com or whatever, and it won't even let you go there because they'll be able to control the flow of information and control the flow of how people receive information online now that we've become so accustomed to it. And it'll be under the guise of it's for your own safety, it's for your own benefit. And we look at all the deception that's going on now with deep fakes and with all of these hacks and cyber attacks and everything else that's going on. I have no quandary to think that there is going to be so much threat online that you're going to need, the people are going to be crying out for the government to come up with a solution. And they already have the solution. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be this new AI program. Just like we see AI being incorporated, it's being put into the laptops with new updates. It's being put into your iPhones, your Androids. I mean, I don't think we have any option in not taking it at this point. I guess you could go into your settings and, greatly minimize it, but it's still there to some degree. And it's just going to be the nature of everything going forward. You're not going to be able to escape it. And 1 second after the rapture, I mean, everything is going to be on lockdown at that point. And come to think of it, why so much, Christ focused, the overarching theme of the last days was going to be deception. And I think we get in our minds that it's just going to be sleazy politicians and these guys on TV, televangelists, trying to con people out of their monies for holy water or whatever. It's not going to be that obvious. I mean, aside from the normal scams and deceptions that have increasingly become complicated over the years. I mean, remember back when we had the Nigerian prince email scams? We're like, hey, you're really like a long lost relative, and I need to deposit all this $500 million, and I'll let you keep some of it. and it's gone from that to where now people are getting calls on their phone, and it's picking up as Wells Fargo. It's picking up as a bank or a business. And the person talking isn't going to have some Indian accent or Southeast Asian accent, and you're trying to understand what they're saying. It's going to be flawlessly perfect, and it's going to sound very professional. It's going to sound like, Bob from the bank, down the road. Yeah. And I think it's going to get so bad that the people are going to cry out for some type of fix to this, because lives are going to be so turned upside down when you log in online to your bank account and it's completely wiped out, or the stock market crashes, or there's 1,000 different scenarios that could play out. But people are going to demand some type of control over the internet, just like right after 9/11, we got the Patriot Act. People, the people didn't necessarily demand it, but the government offered it, and nobody stopped to say, hey, maybe we should think about this and read it first before we actually sign it into law. Yeah. And that was within 30 days. Just think about the next major economic crash, or the next major, it could be some massive cyber attack that hits the Federal Reserves, and then that permeates down through the banks, and then everybody's paychecks are messed up, and people are going to demand accountability, and we're going to demand a solution. And that solution is going to come in the form of this new AI governance that's going to govern the internet. And then that is going to reflect those values of its creators, which are not our values. Those are the values of Peter Thiel, Musk, and all these other guys. And that they're not going to come out and say they hate Christ or anything like that, but they just don't care or think about Christ. Or if they do, it's kind of just in some kind of a weird fashion, like they're kind of fascinated, like it's some type of old, medieval Nordic mythology or something. It's fascinating in that regard, but they don't apply it to real life. But the deception is going to start moving from the obvious to where we're not going to be able to know what's real or what's not real anymore. I even have that problem now on my phone. Half the time I get these calls, I don't even know who's calling, what, or email. Like, it's just, you're getting to the point where you can't trust anything.
I there's a lot there, Pete. I couldn't help but laugh when you said Bob from the bank calls. I was thinking of we have Bob from Chicago's the new pope, and and you mentioned holy water. I just have a funny story, and then I want to ask Britt to follow up on this. I was speaking of holy water and selling it. One time we were in Israel and we were at Magdala. And I come and it closed up, right? So I got the whole tour group out to the bus. And I'm walking around the side gate where nobody goes, right? Nobody can see. I'm walking with Craig and a couple of guys. We're walking by there, and these guys have these bottles, empty bottles of holy water, and they've got a hose, and they're filling them up with a hose. And I just thought, so when you said that, I couldn't help but think of that. I probably shouldn't have said that publicly. But hey, when you go to Israel, get holy water, you can get your own bottle and put it in the Sea of Galilee or Jordan River or something. All right. So, Britt, I'm hearing everything that Pete is saying. The system is being built that no one can escape, and people are going to love it. Lawlessness is abounding not just in the streets, it's abounding in technology. I got a text from my bank the other day, hey, is this you? We got a fraud alert, da, 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 da. So you appreciate that. You're like, this is great, they're going to save me. And I think Pete's right. As we see this developing, people are going to say, please save us from these monsters that are out there. And you often talk about a system being built that nobody can escape from. You want to add anything to what Pete was saying, or anybody want to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, I think exactly like Pete said, people are going to clamor for this in the aftermath of, like you said, if your bank account's empty, your retirement account is empty, and you're looking at all your life savings gone, shattered. People are going to demand answers to this, and they're already telling us what the solution is. It's going to be central bank digital currencies, tokenized assets, and digital IDs. As he said, the internet, they're going to demand control of these things, and we've seen various politicians. We had Nikki Haley during the presidential primaries a couple of years ago saying she wanted a digital ID to be able to do anything on the internet, because you shouldn't be able to do things anonymously. And so we're seeing that push because of the power it gives them. And one of the things that is really interesting, if we look at the European Union, so in the EU, they've told us a digital euro is coming in October. That's 4.5 months. One of the things that they're debating right now that's holding up the rollout of that system is they want to put what's called a digital euro holding limits on. And you go, well, what do you mean holding limits? I thought they wanted to roll out the system, get everybody in it. Well, the way the system is set up, you would have a digital wallet held with the European Central Bank. So it bypasses the banking system. So there are many politicians talking and saying, if people move their euros from the bank into the digital wallet with the central bank, that deposit outflow from the banking system, and they've done studies on this at different levels, is going to lead to massive underfunding of the bank's capital impairment. It's going to lead to less loans being made, and it could lead to a collapse of the banking system. And then, of course, when you look at, okay, well, if you have an account with the central bank that is the monopoly creator of euros, therefore they can't go bankrupt. It's the one bank that can't go under because they can conjure the euros out of thin air. If you're faced with the prospect, if I leave my deposits at this bank, I could lose them. But if I move them over here to the digital wallet with the European Central Bank, then they're safe, right? Safe. And which, if everybody does that in a panic in the midst of a crisis, it makes the crisis worse. It leads to a complete collapse of the European banking system. And you can have a collapse of the European banking system without having a collapse of the entire global banking system. So I think this is a feature built into the system. It's, again, they're debating these holding limits to try to prevent that from happening, but they aren't debating maybe we should rethink our premise and how we're setting this system up. They aren't doing that because this is the purpose. The purpose is to create a crisis and say, this is the solution. Destroy the banks. All of the currency flows into the European Central Bank, and then repeat this across the world with all the central banks and all the digital currencies. I have 138 countries, I believe, 98% of global economic output. It's in a place where they're exploring central bank digital currencies. So this is a plan for the whole world. And they want to tokenize everything. Earlier we were talking about things like natural resources in the United States. They want to tokenize every product on the shelf at the grocery store. Everything. They want everything digitized so that they will be able to see every buy-sell transaction. There will be no privacy. There will be no escape from that system. That's what they're putting into place. And we're already on the threshold of, I believe, the greatest financial and economic crisis in human history, but they're setting up the rollout of the digital euro in a way that will help facilitate that or amplify that crisis and destroy the European banking system. So no doubt about it, this is what they want, and they're going to get it one way or another. And I don't think that it matters if we have a Bill of Rights or not. We have a Bill of Rights here in the United States, and it gets ignored on a regular basis. So this is where they want things going, and this is where it's going to end up, unfortunately. And that's what the Bible tells us.
So Britt, let me ask you this. I mean, so they roll out this system, and it's almost like the euro may be the test case for the rest of the world. How do they? I know the answer, I think, but I'll let you answer it. So I'll ask you the loaded question. How do they monitor every transaction that takes place? What tools do they use to do that?
AI and quantum computing, all the things we've been talking about.
So there's a transaction when you have a purchase, and the transaction, goes to a payment processor, and there's a description in that, think of, buying a Twinkie or something like that at a grocery store. So those receipts, have a lot of detail on them, and they'll be sent to the bank. The bank has a record of all that because they have to prove and substantiate to you in an audit in a way that can be audited. Because if you challenge it, they have to have the proof that that supports the idea that amount that you were charged was actually the correct amount. So there's all this audit law around transaction integrity. And it's not a stretch to say that if you expose these are mainframe databases. This is DB2, this is Oracle. These databases run the world, and they're running all the transactions. You don't have to have anything to be able to do that. That's already been in place for decades. But what'll change, I think, is AI will be going in, and look at what happened to the USAID program, where they already showed us that they can query out of these transactional databases the information and study it in new ways, looking for trends and patterns, and they're forensically looking. Why do you think they were so upset when the field that described what that transaction was supposed to be for, against what account in the government budget was it going to be deducted? Why that was not a required field. Guys, think about it. So they were very upset. That software problem is being resolved as we speak, very likely because they want to know exactly the movement of money. USAID was the setup for that whole narrative: fraud, waste, and abuse, over and over. Every channel said the same thing. It was a mantra.
So, Scott, are they using AI to write the programs to figure out all of that data and information?
I don't. So there's an interface. Everyone keeps saying that, that quantum and AI will be, merged. I don't see it that way. It'll be interfaced. So AI will go look for the transactions, and or the transactions will be delivered to it in a batch, and then it will call, various sub programs in order to coordinate a authorization buy or sell. By the way, this brings up the idea of the DEI and other initiatives, and they pushed the people pushed back on these initiatives, and they did a partial rollback. They discovered that if you try to topple people's will on this matter, this is to Britt and Pete's point, by having board members placed by BlackRock, Silver Lake, and some of the other big firms to enforce, these policies, then you have you're losing leverage on that. But what will end up happening, in my opinion, I think we would all agree, is just transactionally, they will find a way to turn the authorization on or off in the process of swiping your card, tapping it, or inserting a chip into it. So that transaction will happen very, very quickly. And I don't know that they need AI to be real time in that process. I think AI will help create the policies around how they will detect if there's an unauthorized or unsanctioned purchase attempt, and that will block it. But I believe that a lot of those transaction processes are already in place. They've been there for decades.
Tom, it occurs to me that maybe we should have Scott and Britt use AI to sort of unpack what we've watched unfold in the Middle East over the past 48 hours to see if we can see if AI can make some kind of sense of it. I say that tongue in cheek, but I'm looking at it, and I'm just saying is that all of a sudden everything it becomes very complex. So you're almost forced into these tools. I will. This is sort of, I guess, the equivalent of a war story from a longtime trial lawyer. We used to have cases that involved boxes of documents, and it eventually evolved into warehouses of documents, plus all of the electronic stuff. I used to work on a case for years, and I'd have a small file of correspondence. About probably 6 years ago, I had to produce a lot of correspondence between my client and I about a bankruptcy involving a farmer. I represented a bank. And we had 8,000 communications in a few months between us. And all of that information is now easily placed into databases. And I will say, for whatever we talk about artificial intelligence, lawyers have been using a form of that for many years. You can't have paralegals go through and analyze that. So we've been using these natural language analyses of vast amounts of documents to show what might be related to key issues in the case. And so this has been going on for a while. Now, the maybe the good news in that is that you used to say kill all the lawyers. Now they'll just AI them out of existence, and they'll get what everybody wanted. But I'm just telling you that the world has, and Tom, all you guys are watchmen. We watch what's going on, but I'm telling you, it's increasingly difficult to analyze everything and pick up on everything. It's a big problem.
Hey, John, I just used AI. Am I going to be in trouble here?
I have a
well,
question.
It depends if we like it. No.
Hey, I just use AI as we're speaking here to find out what technocrats accompanied Trump to Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
Here's the list. You won't believe it. Elon Musk, Larry Ellison, David Sachs, Sam Altman, Howard Lutnick, Reid Hoffman, Peter Thiel, and Alex Karp.
Wow.
Basically, all the technocrats that we see in Washington, D.C., they all went to Saudi Arabia to make a deal, supposedly for $600 billion investment in America, or back to America, to create AI data centers. So
Is
there you go.
Karp the guy
There's-
from Palantir?
Yes,
The
he's
defense
a co-founder
guy?
of Palantir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
go
know,
ahead.
you have to be very careful when you touch AI for sure. It's like, well, how many people, stupid people, you have to talk to sometime, who just want to fill your head with nonsense. That happens to me all the time, right? So you put a screen out. He said, well, I'm not going to take that into my brain because I just don't want it there. Because you can only put stuff in there in limited quantities, at least in my case. But my brain is not as big as it used to be. But when you consider everything that you see in the natural world, talking to people, it's just the same thing with AI at this point. If you accept any answer from AI without testing it, at least one as maybe double-blind study something, check your information in another resource as well. But if you don't do that, you're going to come away with all kinds of nonsense. And that's where people get really confused. If you don't ask the right questions, you're going to get stupid answers. That's it.
But I'm seeing chats that people have with these AI models, and they get into it. You can argue with them. I mean, it's hard for me to grasp. I saw a stat yesterday that among college students, 99% use AI in surveys, and that just means that 1% of them are lying. Because I'm sure it's 100%. It's just hard for me to grasp the world that we're in. Tom, why don't I let you get back on track since you're the moderator, but there's one thing that I want to bring up in a little bit from a friend of mine who's I call him my AI insider, and he fed me a list of things, and I think it's very interesting, and I think it plays into a lot of the things that we're talking about. So go ahead, Tom.
Okay, so first of all, John, I want to say this. I think attorneys and CPAs are going to be replaced by AI far before plumbers. So that's just a guess of mine. But let's go here. So we're talking about AI.
Wishful
so if we
thinking.
go back, YouTube, remember when YouTube was the devil? And, TV used to be the devil, all these things. But then we realized, well, wait a minute, we can infuse and input onto YouTube that, which is good. Hence, that's what we're doing right now. So AI, isn't that a similar thought process as we look at it going forward while we still have day? The night is coming, we all know that, but while we still have day, we can press forward with what is good regarding AI with input of information and getting everything out there we possibly can. Can we?
Absolutely.
Should
You're
we?
right. I agree. We should. And as much as we keep ourselves pure in the process, remember your mind can only hold so much information at one time. Everybody has the limit, in other words. And if you crowd out good stuff in your brain with nonsense, you're going to be sore displeased when you won't like the result. So you need to be very careful what you take in your mind in the first place, and how would you use that tool in another place to perhaps to spread your message in ways you never thought before of doing. Who knows? But the careful use of it this is my key here. If you approach a chat box, we used to do this with Siri when that was first released. People, especially the kids, Siri, or what hey Siri, whatever the keyword is. Siri, is the moon made of green cheese? And they wait for the answer, and they just try to trick it up and whatever. and crazy stuff. But they had a lot of fun with it, I'm sure. But this is not the way to approach AI with stupid questions. If you're you ask a stupid question, you're gonna get a stupid answer. So be careful what you ask for, and be succinct when you ask for something, and then check the results before you go out and make your living off of it, so to speak.
As Solomon said out of gosh, all of a sudden I forgot what Solomon said. As a man thinks, so is he. What you put in becomes who you are. Let me ask this, and then, John, I want to get over to your AI Insider. But with the things you guys were talking about with all of the ways that there's going to be a system that nobody can escape. A big deal that came across America last week is Real ID. I was at the airport in San Diego the day it was implemented. And the good thing about it is nobody is at the airport. And I heard they all got sent home. But I have a passport. I don't have Real ID. But people are saying if you have Real ID, it's pretty much game over for you. Don't go with Real ID. But we've heard this about Social Security numbers. We've heard about ATM debit cards and all these things. Your thoughts on this? This is my perspective. It's part of the direction everything is going. Everybody, I'm already in a database. I already have a passport. But I'm curious as to any of you guys want to jump in here on Real ID and just things going forward with.
Yeah, I live in California as well, Tom, and I've had Real ID on my driver's license for years. When the first threats were being made that they were putting a travel restriction if you don't have it. And so, like you said, I think that we all have numbers and we're all being tracked. And I don't see that it makes sense denying the fact that there is increasing controls coming. And it's okay. This is a very delicate topic here, because we know that the on-ramp to the beast system is slippery and people will want it. They'll demand it as a part of the Hegelian dialectic, the problem and the solution and the synthesis, right? So it's a stepping stone, but it's still a benign process right now. And you know that they're going to have to enforce these IDs. Otherwise, what's the point of setting a policy that you need an ID? So at some point, they have to enforce it. Otherwise, it's not real. They just keep pushing it down the road. And what Britt said earlier about the chokehold on, the European digital dollar and other CBDC type mechanisms, including the Stripe, new, I would say, a stable coin, things like that. It's going to be one of those things where I think that, it's not the mark. We're not going to see the mark. Let's be clear, if you take a pre-tribulational position. And I think that one of the greatest concerns I have right now is, how do we set the right example for tribulation saints? Because they are going to be standing on our shoulders, looking at how we conducted ourselves and how to take the baton of faith from us as we extend it over the rapture boundary, versus, we today, the church, stand on the shoulders of the apostles. There's another process coming where they are going to look back on what was our thinking about whether to comply with CBDCs and yielding to the registration of all of these digital assets that we know BlackRock and others want to do. And so I think a lot of it's outside of our control, but I do get concerned about how do we represent what we know is coming and defend it in the right way, so that tribulation saints don't automatically think, well, if the people in the church were doing it, why can't we do it? And they unknowingly actually begin to walk into the beast system without having the right perspective on it. And I don't know, guys, that's very, just putting yourself into the mind of a tribulation saint and looking backwards. I'm very concerned So on one side, I say real ID, no big deal. Maybe even a CBDC. Maybe if that's the only way that we can survive all these dreaded reset problems and things that are coming. But on the back of the other side of my head, I'm thinking, should we have a plan to resist this in order to encourage those that are going to come after us? By the way, I just semi-commercial break here. I don't know that we're going to see all these things exactly. It's hard. I think all of us would admit that it's really difficult to know where that boundary is. The Bible is silent on where that boundary is. It's just that we can smell the tribulation controls coming into place in Revelation 13. We could smell the distress of the world, and we haven't even begun to really tip over the dominoes that have been erected for decades now. Things like debt crises and other big things that could just absolutely deflate everything in the world very quickly. So Britt, I know you talk about digital banking holidays and other mechanisms like that. But I think where I get extremely concerned just wrapping this, I feel like I'm very conflicted. I'll just be very honest with you. Yes, I have Real ID. I've had it for years. I was a watchman when I had Real ID. So I knew what was happening. It's not like I was ignorant. But where that balance is something that I think we're going to have to struggle with as the church until we're gone.
Good point.
Thank you. Anybody want to add to that before I turn it over to John for his AI Insider? Yeah,
I think as far as you mentioned airports, this is another one of these breeding grounds for pushing us into the system. So they're making things more convenient for you. Go through the line quickly if you have this. Stand over in this really long line if you don't, right? The United Nations is pushing a global passport for airline flights that is comprised of a digital ID, and they would scan your face in order to get you onto the flight, and you jump to the head of the line. If you miss your connecting flight, well, it'll automatically reschedule your next outbound flight for you. So they make all of these conveniences. And again, most people just go along because they don't want to deal with the trouble of not going along. But this is where it gets us, is a loss of freedom. And we've seen, again, they're pushing these systems, and there's no sign that they're really not going to get what they want, because you look at, in the United States, we have TSA is scanning people's faces. We have 17 states that have digital IDs now. And a bipartisan group of senators came out and said, we don't want this. And it included Elizabeth Warren and Ted Cruz. You've got people that far apart on the political spectrum in total agreement. They're claiming this could create a global surveillance system. Yet it's still moving forward. So you think, how is this continuing to move forward? And of course, the TSA is claiming, well, we just take your picture and then we delete it. It's not in a database. And you think, then what are you comparing my picture to? But it's already in a database. Yeah, you may not keep it on that particular machine, but it's on the digital ID. So they're creating databases of all this information. They have it from so many different directions already. I think, like Scott said, we should stand against this. You need to know where your red lines are and what you're not going to cross. But
the greatest challenge I think we have, Britt, is how do we address this as the body of Christ right now? And I have to say, this is a minefield, and I don't know how we're going to do it yet. But I'm very concerned of what we do in these last days.
Just go ahead.
Go ahead,
Patrick.
No, go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead. After you.
I would say that one thing what I would like to pass on to the tribulation saints is not necessarily what I did, but what my attitude was and how I handled all of the tribulation that we have on this side of the rapture. And that is what we see, the attitude we see in Psalm 23, for instance. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. This is the message that Christians need to be in touch with right now. Yes, there's evil in the world. Yes, it's coming for you. If it could, it would destroy you. God won't let that happen to you personally, but there's evil in the world, and we should not fear this evil. I don't care how ugly it gets, no matter what they do to us. We just should stand firm in our position. God loves us. He's protecting us wherever we might be. And it says, his rod and his staff, they comfort me. This is the message that the post rapture saints need to have, that we can tell them that, well, actually we can't, but you get my point. This is the message I think that I would like to send to those people right after the rapture. Get ready for it, guys. It's going to be trouble. It's going to be really horrible, and you're going to be tested beyond what you ever would imagine. But God is with you. Do not fear the evil that's coming upon you. Period.
Pete.
Mine's quick. I was just going to say, echoing kind of what Patrick was saying, that despite the technology, despite of how fast things move in the world and what the new threats and everything are, if you're born again, you have the Holy Spirit living inside of you. You've got the God that spoke the universe into existence living inside of you. And you have the holy host of heaven that's assigned to carry out God's messages and his agendas here on the earth, as well as the remnant body of believers. To Scott's point, I don't think the church is going to wake up. I think we're full on into the Laodicean era time period, and the majority of Christendom is asleep at the wheel. There's a small little pocket of believers in different places that are watching and trying to get the message out. And I think God has opened that door through things like YouTube and social media. And I would just, I think we just do what you've been planning to do, and what many of us have been doing, is just trying to get as much information out there so it's in as many different platforms as possible. And then also having things prepared, left behind kits and whatnot that can be accessible, like on a thumb drive or some other things that is easier to transport. But yeah, that was it. We have God inside of us. We shouldn't need to fear. And I just pray that if there's something between now and the rapture that is a place where the church could take a stand, I pray that we do. And kind of like what happened in 2020, there was a lot of churches that didn't shut down, and they faced the music from whatever state they lived in. Some were successful. I think most were successful. I think some were probably not. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. It was up in Calvary Chapel, San Jose, in the heart of Silicon Valley, where Mike McClure has pretty good sized church, not too far from you, Scott, but you're a little ways from there, but you know him. And he has all these tech people from Facebook and Google that go to his church. He stayed open, and he's still battling the lawsuits, but you know what? It's been great. He's been shining that light up there. He stayed open. Still bet $3 million in lawsuits still from the city up there in San Jose. But I think of what you guys were sharing, and I'm reminded of Revelation chapter 12. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, the word of their testimony. They do not love their lives unto death. John, I want to hear from your AI expert, but I got to say this first, because when I was traveling last week, I'm going through these airports, and I'm thinking, you know what, this is really annoying. I have to have my passport, and I'm worried I'm going to lose it. Then I have to have money to go and get a snack or something. Then I got to get on a plane. I got to find my phone, or I got to find my boarding pass, wherever it is I have it stored. I think if I lose anything, you're done traveling. How easy it will be to sell the people on, if you got a mark on your hand or your forehead, you're good to go. You don't need to carry anything. The selling of these things is going to be much easier as time moves forward. And that's a huge concern that people need to be aware of. Okay, John, you have an AI insider. What's the story?
Yeah, let me bring that up. First of all, I will note that in chat, one of our resident wise guys, I think, asked the question about is the how many technocrats were invited to Saudi Arabia? Did it happen to be 10? I think playing on that as the 10 kings maybe at least includes some technocrats. At this point, I think that's a possibility. So let me bring up from my insider friend. He's been in the tech business for many years. I don't want to identify him too much because he's still in that space. But I sent you all a document that I received from him involving Microsoft and AI agents. Scott, maybe you could just explain to everybody what the concept of an AI agent is.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the distinction is already here. An AI chatbot, if you go to a website or you have an app on your phone, that is a chatbot. You are interacting with a bot. You say something or type it in, and it responds to you. It's a one-on-one conversation. The new system that's already here and working and being implemented, programmers are learning how to do this. It's called the agentic framework. It uses think of it like a autonomous robot that you assign a chunk of work to do, and then it on its own, without your further input, goes out and does it. And when it's completed it brings the answer back to you. Now, this is a thing of scale. So when you're interacting with a chatbot, it's one-to-one. You are bound to that session. When you click and close the browser, that session's done. It's not doing anything anymore, but that's not what's coming. What's coming are agents that are going to go and do things while you are kicking back in the jacuzzi. You know what I'm saying? So it is a new way, a massive change. Britt, you've been talking about agentic framework, autonomous things. When you talk about drone swarms and things like that already have their orders and they're going out to do the mission. So agentic frameworks, that's basically a nutshell for how to think about what this is doing. And of course, Microsoft is at the forefront of this, along with many other companies.
So, John, you want to take anything from there?
Yeah, here's just a summary of what he sent me as to how he thinks this is working out, or what's been talked about in the industry. Phase one, I think that's what Scott was just talking about. Employees use AI agents as a tool, and I will tell you, I'll go back to the law business. I get sent stuff on AI and lawyers and stuff all the time, but it's pretty clear that a lot of the basic rudimentary work that we used to give to lower level associates is going to be done by AI and is already being done by AI in many cases. And then the question becomes, how do you train a lawyer to get to an expert level where they can contribute to what the base AI is going to be doing? And I think this is where this concept of agents come in. So in phase one, employees use AI agents as a tool. Phase two, AI agents become teammates. Phase three, AI agents become employees managed by humans. And speculation is that there is a phase four, AI agents managing human employees. And how does this all play into this system that we think that we see coming and being built in front of us?
That's a good question. I'm going to take it a step further and see what everybody has to say. So Anthropic's CEO predicted that AI could surpass human intelligence by 2027. I don't know if that date has since changed, but we listen to these things. We think of what is a threat. Okay, John, you have these different stages, and it all goes along the same line. So with these 4 stages, at what point are we there by 2027? Are we there earlier than that? There's some estimates I read we're going to be there before that. And then when we look at it, I know, Scott, you already spoke to this somewhat, but what is the real threat? Because what we are all told is it's going to be, you're going to have a robot that works on whatever you're doing while you're taking a jacuzzi or whatever. So you go back to one of my favorite fictional sci-fi programs growing up was a cartoon named The Jetsons. Most of you guys are old enough to remember that. So you have Rosie the robot, but these robots are far advanced. Elon Musk is saying, no, there's going to be a legion of robots, and they're coming like now, and they're not going to be very expensive. But the reality of it is, what you're saying is, okay, it sounds wonderful to people who aren't paying attention, but all of this, and with the 4 stages John has, this is, what kind of threat do we see really coming from this, and how soon?
This is already happening in all segments of industry at this point. Probably the computer industry is more sensitive to agents as partners, as assistants, because agents can do programming for them, where they have to, they can set it out, and the AI agent can go and figure stuff out and just give them the code back. But agents are being used across all sorts of industry functions in every industry you can imagine, from management, C-suites, applications, to middle management, even down to the bottom of organization. AI agents are already performing a multitude of tasks for employees, physical employees, and it's only going to get better at this point for their point of view. And when you consider, and this is my assessment, by the way, AGI is already with us, I do believe, and here's why. When a baby is born, it can't do much of anything. It can drool, it can coo, it can do other things, in the diapers, but it can't do much of anything, right? But as it learns how to respond to people, to the parents, and it begins to learn things, and its first words come out of his mouth, dada or whatever, and it learns to take steps eventually, and it grows up into a functioning adult at some point. Well, this is where this AI baby is, AGI baby is at this point. I think Sam Altman realizes what he has in his hands at this point, and it's only going to get better at this from here on. And we think, I think that you'll see use cases coming out all over the place. If you look for them, you'll see so many use cases, how people are using agentic AI to perform jobs and tasks for them.
So speaking of Sam Altman, we have this iris scan. He's been talking about that for a while, but how far along are we already, let's say population wise, there's 8 billion people on the planet. How much is this being implemented so far? I mean, if we tie in that Sam Altman technology, then we start tying in everything else, the AI, all of this goes to the direction that's necessary for Revelation chapter 13, correct?
I would say, yeah, exactly. The only reason Sam Altman is doing this WorldCoin nonsense is to pave the way for universal basic income. There's no other, he can't possibly get an iris scan of all the people on Earth. That's not going to happen any way, shape, or form. So, but his idea is to pave the way to to a situation where universal basic income can be implemented. And he's already giving people, when they get their eyes scanned, he's giving them cryptocurrency on the spot for having done that. And people in third world countries think that's pretty cool. It's just come to America recently, though. I don't know how America's going to think about it. But,
some Americans will think it's great because I mean, is there any way going forward, if we just think this out months and then years, you know, we don't know when the rapture is going to take place, don't know the date, but is universal basic income a fact that is coming and there's really no way around it?
I see it as the outcome of the Great Reset and the collapse, economic collapse that will occur in order to roll out the beast system in its official capacity. So I don't know that we'll see it. It's just my opinion. What do you guys think?
It'll take the right circumstance to make it happen for sure. And we're not there yet. But you can see it's going to happen because even people like Mark Andreessen, Mr. Make America Great Again, the technocrat for sure, he made an astounding, outrageous statement just a few weeks ago. He said that AI is going to crash wages. And nobody picked up on it. I heard him speak this, and you can see him on the internet, actually, on YouTube. What an outrageous thing to say, but he obviously believes it, that AI is going to crash wages. Well, what about you have the loss of jobs in the first place, but being able to crash wages itself? This sets up a situation. How are these people going to live? How can they put food on the table at all if they don't have a job, or they have no wages, or the wages drop by, say, 90%? That's going to set a very ugly precedent in place. And you know, the technocrats really don't have an answer for this. That's what has always bugged me. They really don't have another answer other than to say, well, we'll just give people a universal basic income. Somehow that's going to satisfy everybody. It won't. But, you know, well, go figure.
Mm-hmm. Britt, what do you think, Britt?
Yeah, I think that's where it's heading, because again, we talk about these different agents. The AI leads to higher productivity. So if somebody knows how to use AI today better than their peers, then you could basically take, say, a job that 3 people are performing now, maybe 1 could do, and the other 2 lose their jobs. And so it's highly deflationary, as Patrick just said. And as people lose their jobs, then they can't pay back their debts, their credit card debts, their student loans, their mortgage debt, all of those things. That leads to deflation of the currency supply as all that debt is defaulted on. And we have massive global debt. And so that's very deflationary in and of itself. And so, you know, what I remember being a kid and playing Monopoly with my cousin, right? And it got to a point where I owned all the property on the board, but I wanted to keep playing the game. So I paid her a salary every time she went around the board that I knew she would just pay back to me by the time she got around. And after a couple of times around the board, she said, wait, why am I even playing this? Why are we doing this? So it's a very similar thing where this cabal of people are going to be in control of all the capital, all the property. And they're going to want to keep playing that game. They're not going to want a revolution. So let's try to pay people off. Bread and circuses. We've seen this throughout history, and we're going to see it again.
And wage deflation is something that's being actively talked about in Silicon Valley right now, because the value proposition of the agentic framework that we've been talking about is if you pay the modest sum of $20,000, which you're paying for the fees, the tokens that you're using AI with, the calls, the repetitive calls that you're doing in order to develop software. And it costs you $20,000 worth of large language model billing per agent. And yet you could displace an actual human software engineer that's making $150,000 to $250,000 a year. That's the problem. That's what the wage pressure is going to do. And what would probably be a nasty situation is if you're making $150,000 to $250,000 a year, and all of a sudden you're getting displaced. The HR department says, well, we'll continue. If you want to stay here, we'll let you work. But now you have to earn minimum wage because that's the only way you can compete against an AI, which is 24/7, never stops, and is 10 times as productive as you are as a human. So the wage deflation is very possible.
Here's the case in point. Salesforce, one of the largest program companies in the world, a few weeks ago said they're going to freeze hiring because of AI and let natural attrition occur to pare down their workforce. And they figured that they can produce more software with less people than ever before. So they said, well, we're not going to hire any more engineers. So don't apply for a position at this point at Salesforce. Other companies are going to be saying the same thing along the way. They just say, well, we've got everybody we need. We like the people. We got some top people, and we'll keep them. But everybody else is going to hit the road, and we won't rehire.
Wow.
Well, but Scott, I mean, you mentioned this earlier, and I think somebody in chat or text made the point that these agents that, these AI agents, you might pay a person a salary, but that person, the problem with that person is they like to go home to be with their family. They want to go golfing. They want to do something else, play pickleball. They want to sleep at night, but the AI agent can work 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this is what you were saying, Patrick, human agents become pretty big loss leader pretty quickly.
It has to do with value proposition. The value prop is diminishing dramatically. And business understands this. That's why there's a massive adoption process right now to try to understand how these things work. And to be fair, agentic frameworks such as the MCP framework out of Anthropic, and even OpenAI created one. I can't remember what the name of it is offhand, but they have one too now. It works differently than traditional chatbots, but it allows you to do parallelism for very low cost, and it's going to be dramatic in the next few months even. I don't think it will take long to see increasing levels, as Britt is famously saying all the time. It's a parabolic adoption curve that, as a matter of fact, even Patrick, I remember you said you did a back of the napkin calculation where you thought that by the end of 2025, AI would be, I think you said, 1,000 times better than it is today.
That's right.
And by the way, I just weave in one of the research studies I did here. It's just been announced that a white paper by some researchers have invented a new process with AI training called the absolute zero reasoner. This is brand new. This is a few days old, to my attention at least, where they don't really train the AI anymore. They just tell it to learn, and it does learn. And so the human in the loop part of it, you would imagine that one of the safest jobs you can have in today's world is to be in the safety team of an AI company, because they're out of control all the time. You got to rein them in. And the thing is, you need a human to have that judgment. Well, this absolute zero reasoner is suggesting that when they do the performance benchmarking and all the suites of tests that they use, it's scoring, even in this early point of the philosophy on how to do this, it's already scoring competitively with the other models, which have massive infrastructure costs. So here you go. If you take the human out of the loop of these reasoning training processes here, now we've got synthetic data. We have human in the loop removal.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, this is going to explode right here.
Yes,
If
absolutely.
you can get rid of the human in the loop, the danger flags in your mind should be blinking, and you should be hearing a siren. If you're not putting a human in that loop, oh my goodness, that is so dangerous.
It would seem that way.
So
I think it's even more profound than that. I mean, we're looking at the potentiality really of removing humans from a cycle, whether it's whatever business or whatever. But think about how fast AI is advancing. And I would argue that it was a big joke that a couple of years ago, if you did an AI image generator, if you did a human, you'd always get like 6 fingers or like double rows of teeth or some crazy, like, you could spot it pretty easy. But look how much it's advanced in just this short period of time. I think that the because the way that chats learn, when one learns one thing, they all learn it at the same time. It's my understanding of it, or the systems that they're open AI systems that they're tied into. And so it's always going to be exponentially learning for them because it's like hive mind. They just get it all at the same time. You and I, we have to go to school for 4 years. We got to, learn whatever the degree we're trying to get or skill. And it takes time for us to comprehend that. But think about this, as technology increasingly moves into the body, and especially if Musk perfects the neuro chip or whatever, and they offer and said, hey, instead of going to college and getting into debt for $200,000, you take this chip and you'll have a PhD level understanding of whatever subject that you want to learn. What does that do to the university systems, to academia? It's going to collapse them as that technology becomes increasingly affordable for people to buy, or at least it may be even issued out. Who knows? But if like you guys were talking about it from the corporate sense, if I don't have to hire this person for this particular job, but think about the education aspect of what it took that guy or that gal to get that education, even do that job. And now all of that's going to be thrown out the window, because why even bother learning? Because I can just get a chip and all of a sudden I'm going to know everything. And I don't think that chip technology in the brain, I don't think that is far at all. I think that is very soon. And Patrick, I think you are a lot closer to truth than you think you are. I mean, I see it as the end of 2025 too, as being exponentially we can't even really understand it right now because of this idea of the tyranny of the present. But here's a last couple things. We know the world's moving toward the beast kingdom. The infrastructure is being set. The foundations have already been laid. We're moving. We're well into that process. And what has to happen? They had to break down the Westphalian order that's been in the international law since 1648, where the nation state has sovereignty over its own exclusive territory. That's all going away. They need that to go away for this one system, whatever, a 10 region empire, whatever it's going to be. And they do that through things like mass migration. They move all these people into these different places, and it destabilizes the country. They quickly diffuse the ethnic population, and they lose their identity, and they don't really care anymore. Or it's become a flashpoint, like in the UK and other places, where you take these people that are so diametrically different in terms of what they believe and how they live. They want to live under Sharia law, and you put them in like the UK or Norway, France, and you're going to have these massive clashes of civilizations, which is what it's designed to do. It's designed to break down the nation state. Economics, get the nations into some kind of a financial system they can't ever get out of, or get out of the debt. They just keep piling on debt. That's another system. But this last system is all these revolutions: the first industrial, second, third. Now we're in the fourth, the cyber physical. this is going to be the one that absolutely does. It's the nail in the coffin, I think, for the old world order. And it's going to completely, and when you take away people's incentive to learn, you take away their incentives to buy, to make a living, because now they can't, because now they've got to take they've got to get this kind of chip or whatever. And they're just like, I don't want any part of it. Now they're disenfranchised from the society. And it's just going to increasingly get that way. I think we'll see a little bit of that on this side of the rapture, but I do think that it's going to be very profoundly different 1 second after.
So we got about 5 minutes left, John. I have okay. So let's go here. So as I'm listening to everything, I read a book a long time ago by Arthur C. Clarke, 2001 Space Odyssey. I'm sure some of you guys remember that. So the computer takes over everything, right? And science fiction. Well, we're staring at that now. But we know in the Bible we have 10 kings, whatever they are. They could be technocrats, whatever they are. There's different opinions, possibilities, but men are still in control of the system. We are rapidly approaching a time when it appears men won't be able to control this thing that's coming. The Arthur C. Clarke theory, speculation. I mean, we're staring at it. But the Antichrist is going to have control over it. False prophet will, the 10 kings will. There's something that's created that they're able to turn it over to this beast and say, it's yours. I look at this and it makes me think of the proximity of the time for the Lord to call us home and the tribulation to begin. But I'm just curious, now we have about 4 minutes left. You guys, that took me 1 minute and 26 seconds. Okay. Britt, closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think that, again, humans aren't going to be excluded from this loop. Humans will step into it. So yes, we are approaching that time. We're seeing this exponential increase in technology. But as Pete mentioned, so when Neuralink went into FDA trials, they had a number of news stories on it. And of course, the stated purpose was to help the blind see, to help the paralyzed be able to walk and use their limbs again. And Elon Musk said, I'm going to get one too. Right? So this is the whole point of the transhumanist movement, is to not be left behind by this advancing technology. So as the technology advances exponentially, there are going to be human beings who will willingly merge with it. And so we aren't looking at a scenario. I put a 0% chance on that we see a Terminator type or 2001 Space Odyssey type scenario.
Agreed.
The concern is not AI. The concern is human beings in possession of AI amplifying the darkness of the human heart, and what that means for the rest of humanity from those who take over control of this and are wielding it over others. So yes, what the Bible is saying is true. There are going to be men still in control, and they're going to be merged with this technology. It goes back to what you originally stated, Tower of Babel. Nothing will be impossible for them.
All right, excellent. Scott, you have closing thoughts?
I do. Two things. One is to underscore the closeness of the hour. Let's remember that it's at the midpoint that the mark is actually enforced. That's when, if you deny your opportunity to take the mark and to worship the beast, then you get beheaded, right? It's very severe. So if you consider that that's 3.5 years into the tribulation period, can you imagine, based on what we've seen just in the last year or two, how much more advanced systems and procedures and technology will be by the time you're 1,260 days into the tribulation? It's just incredible how much room there is, technologically speaking, in order to iterate and to get all of these things tied up in a bow. And I would say the second thing that I would like to say in conclusion is that we need to work on fear and anxiety, myself included, by the way. But I think we need to work on, just as we process what's happening in the world in these updates, I think what the biggest takeaway is we need to be about the Father's business, period. We know that time is short, and we need to seize every opportunity that we can. So if you're waiting for your calling, I suggest taking more risk and pushing harder. If you are a prodigal that's been having fun half in and half out of the world, you probably should consider how you intend to finish well if you don't come back to the Father and to re-engage with the biblical truth. If you are someone that doesn't know the Lord and you stumbled onto this video and you wonder, why are these guys saying all this stuff? I don't get it. Well, trust us, we're doing this for your benefit so that you can see the evidence of what we're seeing. There's dramatic changes coming to the world, and they are not leaning into a utopia, although the Antichrist will make it look like that initially. This is a very severe time. We're at the end of the church age right now, and it's imperative that you understand what's at stake for you eternally right now in this moment. So with the things that the Bible talks about, we are highly motivated to explain to the audience here, whether it's in the live stream or after the fact, that please understand, trust us when we say we love you. And today is the day of salvation. Do not put off what you know in your heart you need to do, because you have already seen enough to know that I need to take action, and we do pray that you will.
Amen. Pete, got any closing words?
Yeah, just, it's hard to keep up with everything these days. And if you allow it, it will become this massive distraction. And that's not just with the technology, but with all the conspiracies and everything else. We know that they're real. We know that there's evil men doing evil things. But we need to stay focused on getting the message out about the soon coming of our Lord. We need to be diligent in our families, in our work, in our relationships, to be the best representations of Christ that we can be. And if you're married, that you need to love your wife like Christ loved the church. If you're a father, you need to teach your children, raise them up to know and understand the Bible, and to understand truth, and to understand who Jesus is. If you're a worker, be the best worker you can be, and be the best example of the salt and light you can be for your community. You're good for everybody out there. You guys are all representatives. You're all ambassadors, all warriors for Christ. And we know that our battles are not waged with weapons of like men, but we pray, and we intercede, and we care for, and we love, and we people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, and so we need to be those kind of people if we want to win them to the Lord. And I feel like that's it's good to have this knowledge. It's good to understand Bible prophecy, because it does act like a shield against all of the deception that's increasingly being lobbed at us every day. I got a friend on Facebook that is super excited about this new pope. He thinks it's time. We need to unite all of Christianity behind this pope. And I'm like, dude, have you ever read Revelation 13? If you knew that, you would not be saying that. So I just feel like having prophecy in our hip pocket and understanding it, even though we may disagree on some minor points, we know that Christ is coming back soon. And that alone is how we filter all of the stuff coming at us, and recognizing the temporary nature of everything that we see around us, that this is not going to go on very long, and that our deliverance our redemption is very, very soon.
Amen. Thank you, Pete. Patrick, final words.
You bet. I'll say the word fear, like do not fear, etc. It appears like 77 times in the Bible. You should read every one of them. Do not fear. Fear not. This all, this is an exhortation. Even the possible John, in writing the book of Revelation, I think he had the exhortation from either the Lord or an angel. Do not fear, John. Well, okay, you get the message. Don't let fear captivate you. Make your peace with God now, while there's time to do it, and you're in the quiet of the eye of the storm. Take your stand now. You don't have to wait to dig your heels in the sand and say, I'm going to stand for Christ right where I am, and wherever he wants to take me from this day forward, just go there, whatever it might be, either physically or mentally or whatever. And then always guard your mind and your heart, because that's all you have in the end. That's how you relate to God, is with your mind and your heart. So be a guard, put a guard on on everything you take into your mind and down to your heart as well. And then lastly, open your mouth. Speak up. Don't be shy. When you have an opportunity, the Lord can tell you exactly when you're supposed to open your mouth, but don't deny him that opportunity. If you have an opportunity to speak up, don't lose it. Don't lose the opportunity. Speak up. People need to hear what we're talking about today.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, man. John, thank you for the opportunity today for all of us to get together and share with the world. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask questions too, and to learn more. But with you, your final thoughts, and it's your program, and take it away.
You're muted.
John is muted.
I muted myself. I think I want to go back to where I started at the beginning with the question
Is it 2
that
more
I
hours?
asked. No, you wish. Oh, I see the numbers. No, they're not dropping yet. But I really do think that people. I would ask people to pray for people that are, I guess, watchmen, because it is a very daunting task at this moment to keep up with everything, because there is such this acceleration and convergence. I will tell you, I know all of these guys, and none of these guys that are with us tonight are fearful or running around, hiding under the covers or anything like that. We feel that we have missions to accomplish, things to do until the Lord returns, and to equip other people. I reference it a lot, that the passage in Daniel talks about that at the time of the end, there will be wise men who understand and instruct many. And I think our prayer should be for all of us to be in that category. But as I've watched the last 24 hours with the U.S. president in the Middle East, meeting with these incredibly wealthy people and kings in the Middle East, trying to fashion peace and do economic deals, and incorporating these guys, like, the Saudis are big on AI. Their whole goal for NEOM and that Mukaba thing they're building in Riyadh, the largest building on the planet, are all based and centered around AI. So what we're seeing is an incredible convergence of things right now that ought to indicate to us that we're close to the end. And so I think that I would hope to do more of these roundtables on maybe more focused topics. I want to continue with you guys and on the AI technology side, but I think that Scott, you kind of swerved into something that I thought was pretty profound earlier when you talked about how do we get people informed so they can deal with what's coming. I do think that there's a tipping point that will be reached, at which time, people will have to say, whoever it is that's around at the time, you really need to avoid this. And so, but it's going to be tricky because some of the details in scripture are not there. But if somebody's telling you you've got to worship somebody to be able to participate in the economic system, then that's probably a thing that you need to clearly opt out of, regardless of the cost. So don't be fearful, stay in the word, and try to be wise. So again, I want to thank all of the guys that joined us tonight, all of you that took time to listen, like, share, subscribe on all the platforms that this is on. Appreciate most of you. You were very well behaved. There were a few people who ended up getting banned and blocked for bad behavior, but that was certainly a very, very tiny minority of the people that were here. Follow everybody. There's links in the show notes as to where you can follow people, subscribe to their content, and that type of thing, as if those opportunities arise. I know a lot of us are doing multiple programs and interviews. I've got a couple this week, and Tom and I will be together, I think, next Wednesday. So like, share, subscribe, share the gospel with as many people as you can, because I think the time is increasingly short. So we're going to end the stream, guys. If you'll just hang on, we'll say goodbye to the other side. So again, everybody, thanks for watching tonight. We really appreciate you and look forward to you joining us again in the future. Good evening.